Over the skies of America, a country that prides itself on technology, safety and control, there are places where planes simply disappear. No wreckage, no distress call, just silence. Somewhere between the clouds and the radar, the signal dies, and with it all trace of human life. It sounds impossible in a world ruled by satellites, transponders, and global tracking systems. But the truth is far colder and far older than we want to believe. For decades, families, pilots, and investigators have stared at the same unanswered question. How can an aircraft carrying dozens of souls vanish into thin air over the most controlled airspace on Earth? The official reports speak of storms, malfunctions, or navigational errors. But the silence that follows tells another story. A story of confusion, fear, and something deeper. Something that feels like the sky itself is swallowing the truth. In 1945, 5 U.S. Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine training mission. They never came back. Their radio operator's last words were chilling. Everything looks strange. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should. That day, the legend of Flight 19 was born, and with it, America's obsession with mysterious disappearances. The investigation dragged on for months. No debris, no bodies, not even a single trace of the planes. In a desperate attempt to find them, another rescue aircraft was launched. It vanished too. Some called it coincidence, others a curse. But among the aviation community, whispers grew louder. Rumors of magnetic anomalies, rogue waves, and radar interference unlike anything ever recorded. Over time, more disappearances followed. Cargo planes, private jets, even commercial flights, all swallowed by silence, each leaving behind families desperate for closure. For those left behind, it isn't just about the aircraft. It's about the voices that went unanswered, the seats that will forever remain empty, and the haunting truth that sometimes even the sky keeps its secrets. And as the decades passed, the technology improved, but the disappearances didn't stop. Which forces us to ask, if it isn't just human error, then what lies hidden above our heads? Welcome to the vanishing skies. They called it the Midwestern Bermuda Triangle. Not a tropical sea, not the warm waters of the Caribbean, but the heartland of America. A place of endless sky, flat horizons, and stories that refuse to fade. It's hard to imagine that in the quiet skies above the Great Lakes, one of aviation's most enduring mysteries continues to echo through time. December 1945. Flight 19 vanished somewhere over the Atlantic, but that wasn't the only place where the sky turned hostile. In the years that followed, strange disappearances began to haunt the American Midwest. Planes flying routine routes over Lake Michigan or Lake Erie simply vanished. No wreckage, no distress call. Just a flicker on the radar, and then nothing. One of the most chilling cases occurred in 1950. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 2501, a DC-4 with 58 people on board, was flying from New York to Seattle. The weather was rough, but nothing out of the ordinary for experienced pilots. At 11:37 p.m., the captain radioed in, "We're descending to 2,500 feet due to storm conditions." Those were the last words ever heard from him. The next morning, the Coast Guard found only small fragments of the aircraft and hundreds of life vests floating like ghosts upon the lake. The bodies were never recovered. Investigators scoured the area for months, but the lake held its secrets tight. Some divers claimed their compasses went haywire beneath the surface. Others spoke of strange metallic readings, as if something enormous, unseen, rested deep below. To this day, Flight 2501 remains one of America's greatest unsolved aviation mysteries. And it wasn't alone. Over the decades, countless smaller aircraft have vanished over the same region. Their last transmissions eerily similar. Instruments failing. I can't see the horizon. Something's wrong with the compass. Meteorologists have pointed to violent wind shears and sudden fog banks that rise from the lakes like living walls. Scientists mention electromagnetic anomalies caused by mineral deposits beneath the lake beds. But others whisper of something older, Indigenous legends tell of spirits that guard the lakes, forces that punish those who disturb their rest. Local fishermen still claim that some nights, when the mist rolls in thick and cold, they hear engines humming above the clouds, even though radar shows nothing at all. And perhaps the most haunting truth of all, even with modern radar, GPS tracking, and real-time satellite coverage, planes still disappear over the Great Lakes today. It's as if this part of America's sky holds a memory, a wound that never truly healed. For some, it's just coincidence. For others, it's a sign that we've never truly understood the invisible forces shaping our world. Because sometimes the most dangerous places aren't at war. They're waiting, silent, patient, just above our heads. The first thing they lose is the signal. A blip on the radar turns faint, flickers once, and then disappears. The control tower calls back. No answer. Another transmission, static this time. A voice, trembling, broken by interference. Something's following us. It's just hovering there. Then silence. These are not stories from conspiracy forums. They are official FAA reports, declassified decades later. And together, they paint a chilling picture of skies that sometimes whisper back. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, strange incidents were recorded by both civilian and military pilots across the American Midwest. Veteran aviators, trained to stay calm under pressure, began describing encounters that defied all logic. Bright lights that moved against the wind, metallic objects that appeared on radar, only to vanish seconds later. Entire planes shadowed by something invisible until their communications cut out completely. One case, still shrouded in mystery, occurred in November 1953. U.S. Air Force pilot Felix Monclar was scrambled from Kinross Air Force Base in Michigan to intercept an unidentified object detected over Lake Superior. His jet climbed into the dark, freezing night, radar tracking him all the way. Then suddenly, the two radar dots, Monclar's jet and the unknown object, merged into one. Seconds later, they both disappeared. Search teams combed the lake for days. No wreckage, no oil slick, no signal beacon. Monclar and his co-pilot were gone. Official reports described it as a collision with an unidentified aircraft, but locals tell a different story. That night, fishermen along the shore saw a glowing disc descend into the clouds, then shoot upward and vanish. Similar accounts surfaced again and again through the decades. Pilots reporting mirages that seemed solid, radio channels filling with strange tones, rhythmic pulses like coded signals. Some experts suggested they were natural magnetic fluctuations from the Great Lakes region. But that explanation didn't hold up when those same tones were detected hundreds of miles away, over Kansas and Nebraska. Then came the story of Flight 739. In 1962, a U.S. Army charter flight carrying 93 soldiers vanished without a trace somewhere between Guam and the Philippines. Witnesses from nearby ships swore they saw a bright flash in the sky, yet no distress call was ever sent. The official investigation concluded, cause unknown. What connects these stories isn't just the loss, it's the way the sky seems to erase its evidence. No wreckage, no black boxes. Only fragments of radio static frozen in time. And then there are the recordings, real tapes recovered from FAA archives. Pilots describing metallic hums inside their headsets, warning lights flashing in perfect sequence before their transmissions cut out mid-sentence. To skeptics, it's malfunction. To believers, it's something else entirely, a pattern hidden in the chaos. Perhaps these phantom planes aren't alone in the sky. Perhaps they were seeing or being seen by something that doesn't belong in our flight records. Whatever the truth is, one thing remains certain. When the radio goes silent and the radar blinks out, the sky keeps its secrets. Every time a plane disappears, investigators return to the same question. Was it human error? Because when logic fails, we look to the pilot's hands, the maintenance log, the checklist that may have been skipped, the screw that came loose. It's comforting to think there's a reason, that the sky didn't just swallow them whole. And sometimes that's true. A failed altimeter, A burst hydraulic line. One mistake multiplied by gravity and time becomes tragedy. But in the case of America's vanishing flights, the evidence doesn't fit so neatly. Take the mysterious disappearance of Northwest Flight 2501 in 1950. Bound for Seattle, it vanished somewhere over Lake Michigan with 58 souls on board. The weather was turbulent, yes, but not catastrophic. There was no distress call, no sign of panic. The last radio message was calm, routine, request to descend due to weather. Permission was granted, and then nothing. When the Coast Guard scoured the lake, they found only fragments of seat cushions and a few unidentifiable remains. The fuselage was never recovered. Divers have searched for 70 years with sonar and submersibles, but the lake refuses to give it up. So if not weather and not mechanical failure, then what? Some pointed to sabotage. The early 1950s were thick with Cold War paranoia. Planes often carried sensitive cargo, documents, military personnel, or experimental equipment. Could one of these flights have been the target of espionage? The files on several missing aircraft were sealed for decades under the pretext of national security. Others believe the answer lies in the human mind itself. Pilots, after hours of flight through monotony and turbulence, can experience something called spatial disorientation, a deadly illusion where the body can't tell up from down. Entire crews have flown straight into the ocean, believing they were climbing. But this explanation fails to account for the disappearances that occurred in perfect weather, with experienced captains who left no indication of distress. There's also the theory of intentional vanishing, that some pilots or passengers may have chosen to disappear, a life too heavy to bear, a secret too dangerous to reveal. In 1972, for instance, a small private plane carrying a government contractor disappeared over Nevada's Black Rock Desert. The man was later linked to covert intelligence programs. His body was never found. His bank accounts emptied days before the flight. Coincidence or exit strategy? And then there's the darker speculation, the third category, as investigators call it. Situations where neither human error nor sabotage explains the data. Planes vanishing off radar, not beyond range but mid-transmission. Emergency locators that should have activated automatically. Staying silent. Timestamps that seem to jump, as if seconds went missing from the record itself. In one declassified case from 1989, an air traffic controller noted that Flight 828, a cargo jet, flickered on radar, then returned. 20 miles off course, without any record of a turn. The pilot's voice came through moments later, confused. We didn't move. What's going on? The conversation cut off mid-sentence. To this day, no one can explain what happened in that gap, that missing moment in time. Maybe it was equipment malfunction. Maybe it was something our instruments still don't understand. But every missing pilot, every unanswered transmission adds another thread to the same web, one woven from human error, shadow operations, and something deeper that none of our flight manuals can explain. Because when you stare long enough into the silence of an empty sky, you start to wonder if it's staring back. Decades pass, and yet the silence remains. Families still sit by their windows at night, staring at the sky that once swallowed their loved ones whole, a sky that refuses to give them back. In living rooms across America, framed photos of pilots and passengers have become relics of uncertainty. Wives grew old without funerals. Children became adults without closure. And still, no one can tell them why. The official reports are tidy. They speak of equipment malfunction, loss of signal, possible disorientation. But the truth is buried between those words, in the gaps where evidence should be. Because every time a plane vanishes without trace, something in our collective memory fractures. Take the case of Flight 2501 again. Each summer, volunteers still gather along the shores of Lake Michigan to search for wreckage. They bring sonar scanners, dive suits, drones, and hope. What drives them isn't science, it's devotion. Because finding even a single piece of that plane would mean that someone, somewhere, finally knows. It would turn uncertainty into grief, and grief finally into peace. But the lake remains silent. In Alaska too, pilots still whisper about the Alaska Triangle, a vast, mysterious region where dozens of aircraft have vanished over the years, civilian, military, private. Some say the magnetic fields there distort compasses. Others believe it's something stranger, something that bends not just metal, but time itself. The US government has quietly investigated some of these disappearances. Whales marked classified hint at weather anomalies, energy disturbances, and unexplained radar phenomena. Yet when families request access, they're told the same thing: information unavailable. For them, unavailable means unbearable. And so, they wait. Some still leave porch lights on decades later, tiny beacons against the endless dark. Others write letters to the FAA, to Congress, to the sky itself. A woman once said in a documentary interview, "I don't need a body, I just need the truth." That's what this mystery has become. Not just about vanished aircraft, but about vanished certainty. A test of faith in the systems that guide us. Technology, government, even reality. Because how can we trust the sky when it can erase something so big, so loud, so human without a sound? These disappearances remind us of the fragility of control. Every flight we take is an act of faith. That engines will hold, that instruments will read true, that space and time will behave as expected. But sometimes they don't, sometimes they bend. And in those moments, even the most advanced machines are as helpless as their makers. Maybe one day, technology will catch up with the mysteries it created. Maybe deep-sea drones or quantum sensors will find what the clouds have hidden. Until then, all we can do is remember. Not the wreckage, not the radar data, but the people, the captains who believed in the horizon, the passengers who trusted the engines, the voices that faded into static mid-sentence and never returned. The sky holds them now, a quiet archive of everything we still don't understand. And perhaps that's the real legacy of these vanished flights. Not the mystery itself, but the human need to keep searching, even when the trail has gone cold, even when the signal is gone, even when the sky has stopped answering. Because as long as we ask where they went, they are in some way still here.